So welcome back. We are just days away from the start of COP27, which comes at a time when there are multiple global challenges. The war in Ukraine, as we all know, has destabilized energy markets and supply chains around the world, and we face the prospect of a prolonged recession, at least in the UK, if not globally. And all of these factors, without doubt, will make the priority around sustainability more challenging. But at the same time, we all know that the climate emergency has never been more urgent. This is definitely the critical decade where substantial progress must be made on climate commitments. Our next panel discussion will look at net zero targets, sustainability in real estate and infrastructure, as well as how the transport and logistics sectors are making much needed changes to become more sustainable. Our chair for this next panel is Damien McElroy, the London Bureau Chief at the National, where he oversees coverage of the UK and Europe. And prior to joining the team, he worked for the Sunday Times and Telegraph titles as an editor and roving reporter in the Middle East, Europe, and China. So please welcome Damien.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. It is a very timely panel, I think, because we are at the cusp of the opening of COP27, and so much has happened since we saw COP26 in Glasgow last year. The world has obviously changed greatly since we all gathered up in Scotland. The conflict in Ukraine has shifted the dynamics in global energy markets, especially in Europe. The idea of maximum production, minimum emissions is now at the forefront of policymakers with regards to the energy industry, and consumers very much share those concerns. The tensions that we've seen in Europe and around Ukraine have also disrupted global food markets, with particular concerns in the Middle East, West Asia, and Africa. The basic issues around fertilizers, around efficient crop output, are weighed in new ways by many countries around the world as a result of this war, and they now stand juxtaposed against the struggle to address climate concerns. So all those things are very pertinent issues, and I think the main topics in session 2, which is titled Beyond COP26, are set out for us around renewable energy, real estate and infrastructure, hospitality industry, and enabling the consumer around the infrastructure of that, and transport and logistics. And I think I'll start there with transport and logistics. And I'd like to, first of all, I think we have a short video, and then Darren Ward of the UK firm UVA will be here to discuss their perspectives on how to develop this area. So if we can have the video, please.
مرحبا، معكم مريم من مركز خدمة عملاء أوفا. المركز هنا يخدم جميع مدن المملكة على مدار الساعة. يوجد لدينا عدة فرق مختصة: فريق للقبول والتسجيل، فريق لمتابعة الرحلات اليومية، وفريق لمتابعة الحالات الطارئة واتخاذ الإجراء المناسب لها.
أوفا السعودية هو تطبيق سعودي متخصص في النقل التشاركي، توصيل الركاب. التطبيق السعودي هذا تم بناؤه في السعودية عن طريق فريق متخصص من أبناء وبنات الوطن. ابتكرنا حلول نوعية مختلفة لتحسين القطاع هذا وتغيير مفهوم النقل التشاركي في السعودية وحول العالم.
طبعا دورنا في معمل الابتكار هي خدمة أوفا تقنيا. دورنا يرتكز على شيئين رئيسيين: برمجة وتطوير التطبيق، والإشراف على الخدمات السحابية، وأتمتة عمليات الاختبار التقنية مع كل الأصدار.
So hello, my name's Darren Ward and I'm the CEO of UVA UK. And we just wanted to use the video to introduce the company so I didn't monopolise the time and take the spotlight away from shaping the shared vision. I'd love to talk to you about UVA all day long and the business proposition that we have. It's a non-traditional ride-hailing app. The company culture is completely unique and on a unique business model founded in 3 pillars of driver welfare, customer-driven excellence and operational efficiencies, is currently not considered by any of our competitors. Now, I could talk all day about UVA and how it's hugely benefited right here in the UK from its association with the Middle East. And vice versa, it's fantastic, the relationship really works. But I'm not allowed, and today we're here to discuss shaping a shared vision. So what is the shared vision? Everybody here will have a different opinion about it, and I'm sure people will agree and disagree, and it's a fantastic topic of discussion. But although the 4 pillars of today's session, renewable energy, real estate and infrastructure, hospitality and transport and logistics, are a huge part of the vessel that will shape our shared vision, I believe we need to go further into identifying what the vision will actually achieve for us. Ultimately, it will give us and our children and our grandchildren and many generations beyond a future, sustainability, and actually, it will enable life itself to continue on this planet. There's an old saying that knowledge is power, but something has changed and it's evolving. The new knowledge is data. Data is new age knowledge, and data is power. And that power needs to be harnessed by all so that we can use it for our future together. So the common goal is shaping a shared vision. And at UVA, our shared vision comes from collaboration, innovation, and common goals. And all of these are driven by data. And at UVA, we have a strong focus on people and products and the delivery of those people and products, both locally and globally, how everything moves. The key again goes back to data. And the more data we have access to, the more problems we can solve and the more efficient we will become. And data sharing needs to happen across many industries, across transport and logistics and hospitality, and across real estate and infrastructure. And the data also needs to be considered how renewable energy can service these and many more business and economic verticals. So whilst considering the future and the very essence of life itself, we now need to come right back to today and start planning tomorrow with the future in mind. The key here is to planning the right way. And using data, shared data to be exact, is the only way forward. So how do we as humans, collectively, on a planet that we need to protect, make ourselves less environmentally destructive? And how do we plan real estate development and infrastructure and a hospitality sector we can enjoy through renewable energy in such a way that it gets us to a position where the energy required for people to live, grow, and evolve truly becomes net zero? This is done through collaboration, innovation, and through sharing our common goals. And this is where data, is truly everyone's friend. Well, there's many opportunities to start the journey, and we should talk about collaboration. And collaboration right from the inception of ideas. So when planning real estate, for example, sharing data, we can start to look at the most efficient ways to map out any development, even a mega city, and the need to consider people's daily requirements, food sourcing, shopping, social and entertainment requirements. The list is endless. And the variables are so complex and detailed. The only way we can actually build this brighter future efficiently with true sustainability is by using, and more importantly, by sharing data. How often do people shop? Do we bring food to homes or take people to food hubs? Nobody really knows what's most efficient. Until the data is harnessed, we won't find out. And this will differ in every region of the world, with cultures and creeds all living differently in their own local environments. So from inception, to plan the way we build our future, we need to harness as much knowledge as possible and predict as much of the future as possible to truly shape this shared vision. And this lends itself to innovation, which never stops with humans. As we can see the future in books and in movies all the time, before it's even happened, because as humans, we are capable. And when we're exposed to a vision or an idea, we inevitably find a way to make it happen. Then the common goals. And with these common goals, I go back to the mission of UVA. And an absolute common goal in all nations, from the Middle East to the UK, is to preserve life. And to do this, we need to preserve our planet. So when I talk about collaboration and innovation and common goals, I talk about the potential that can only be realized through communication. Communication between different nations, between businesses, and between different governments, supporting us as humans to support our common goal. And all of this communication is data-driven. Harnessed knowledge that can benefit everyone. There's one seed, one relationship, and one open line of communication has the power to turn from that seed into many, many trees, even into a whole forest. So people, let today be the day of planting seeds together. Let our communication be open. In relationships, we can grow, both in business and in learning. The key is in each and every one of you guys here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Our next speaker will move on to the topic of renewable energy, and we really do have quite a good proposition here, which looks at working together to reach net zero emissions by 2050. And we're delighted to learn the insights stemming from the innovative work of Tokamak Energy and its representative, Kelsall. The world's most promising magnetic fusion device is undergoing extensive scientific experiments in this country with plasmas composed of 50/50 deuterium tritium. And if you want to learn more about that, which I can't elucidate, then we should talk to our next speaker.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Damien. Salam alaikum. Good morning. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you very much to the British Arab Chamber of Commerce for inviting me. His Excellencies, distinguished guests and delegates, a pleasure to see you all this morning. So today I'd like to briefly talk you through an emerging technology which we believe is going to play a critical role in partnering with renewables. So solar and wind and battery storage are absolutely critical pillars to get us to net zero, but they alone cannot get us to the Paris climate targets that we need to achieve. What we actually need are complementary technologies to enable us to achieve net zero, clean, safe, secure, diversified and resilient grids. Unfortunately, recent history with the difficulties in Eastern Europe have yet again reminded us of the critical challenges of energy security. So this is not just around climate change. This is about how we ensure that countries such as the UK, the Middle East and beyond have secure, diversified energy solutions. We're all being reminded, in fact, that energy security is national security. So how can we find low-cost solutions that also enable a just transition? Fusion, we estimate, represents approximately, in our base case forecasts, a $9 trillion market opportunity in terms of invested capital on fusion power plants. That's our core mission, to deliver 500 megawatt power plants for global deployment in the mid-2030s. We've got very significant and deep decarbonisation and electrification targets coming out of the Paris Climate Accords, and obviously there'll be more great work being done in Egypt in the coming days. On top of that, we also recognise that there are increasing energy demands from new and emerging and developed economies where that pressure to meet energy requirements is only growing. So we also need to recognise that renewables are a critical pillar, but they are by their nature intermittent or non-dispatchable. So how do we complement that in a way that gives us cheap, affordable energy security for all? So with fusion technology, this represents an opportunity to access baseload and dispatchable energy anywhere, anytime, that will complement intermittent renewables. We have to meet these deep emission targets, and our grids are going to be going through very significant electrification in order for us to get there. But there's another part of the puzzle that we often gets missed in the mainstream conversation, and that is the industrial sector, the hard to abate and hard to decarbonise sectors such as iron and steel, cement manufacture, petrochemicals, and in the future, emerging technologies in desalination and synthetic fuels. Fusion is an excellent technology that can support those high intense heat requirements for much of the industrial sector where we have to find a decarbonisation solution. There's a further dimension to this, and that is that our future energy grids, if we optimise that portfolio of technologies, and that optimal combination will vary from country to country depending on its local regulations, whether it's got the benefit of solar radiation for solar and wind farms, or whether it is more reliant perhaps on these new technologies. What we find is that above certain levels in a number of country models, above certain levels of penetration of renewables such as solar and wind, the escalating costs of connection, infrastructure and battery storage, particularly for long duration, starts to increase quite significantly. And therein lies an opportunity to optimise the structure of those energy grids and in turn reduce the system costs. Ultimately, the price paid by industry, commercial, households, right across also into the industrial heat sector. We're also identifying significant opportunities for hydrogen generation, not necessarily just through traditional electrolysis, but also through thermochemical reactions where you can split water using high-intensity heat, which is actually a very efficient way to generate hydrogen for future grids. So let me just give you a whistle-stop tour of fusion. It's quite a technical area, but in short, what we're trying to do is replicate what occurs naturally every day and every night with our sun and the trillions of other stars out there in the universe. How do we recreate those conditions on the Earth's surface? So fusion is effectively plasma. So that's superheated gases that are positively charged, millions and millions of degrees in temperature on the sun. We recreate that on the Earth's surface up at our site just south of Oxford. And what we do is we combine two variants of hydrogen. We call it deuterium, hydrogen 2, and tritium, hydrogen 3, at the top of that diagram on the right. We superheat them above 100 million degrees. They accelerate those particles. When they collide with each other, they start to fuse. And when they fuse, they create helium, a new element on the periodic table, and they also create a spare neutron. And it's that neutron that harvests 80% of the energy that's created in this fusion reaction. That neutron can be used for us to tap into and provide power into electricity grids, industrial heat, and also for the hydrogen generation that I mentioned. We use a magnetic confinement device called a Tokamak, and we believe that the spherical geometry, so a more circular cross-section, is intrinsically the most efficient route to commercial fusion. And this goes to the very core of our mission at Tokamak Energy, and that is to create and globally deploy a new energy which is clean, safe, secure, low cost, and genuinely globally deployable. Not simply affordable by G7 or wealthy nations, but is genuinely available for the widest range of humanity possible. That is the challenge before us all if we are to address the climate targets and climate change, mitigate climate change. We were the first to achieve 100 million degrees plasma temperature in a spherical tokamak earlier this year, the ST40, which is an operating tokamak. We have thousands of hours of data, know-how. We know how to run advanced prototypes, and we achieved what's known as the highest triple product of any private fusion company in any tokamak. And that triple product is a measure of temperature, plasma density, and its confinement. That is a key measure of progress towards commercial fusion and an evidence-based approach, which is so very important for new sectors such as fusion, where society, investors, governments need to truly understand what measurable progress these new technologies are making in a very accountable and evidence-based approach. Very simply, we're combining our spherical tokamak technology on the left-hand side of this chart with amongst the world's strongest high-temperature superconducting magnets that are used to contain this plasma in our spherical tokamak device. That enables us to control and optimize its performance for future power plants. And we'll be building the world's first combination of a high-field spherical tokamak with high-temperature superconducting magnets using these two fuels, deuterium and tritium, in 2026. And that will inform the design and optimization of our first commercial fusion pilot plant demonstrator, which will exhibit the ability to put net electricity into the grid in the early 2030s before we go to a first of a kind in the mid-2030s and global deployment. Now, I think on the right-hand side there, I refer to commercialization. And perhaps the most critical point that I want to make to you all today is that we are wide open for business in terms of collaboration. No company is going to solve all the engineering and technical and scale-up and implementation challenges alone. We're looking for supply chain, delivery, and techno-commercial partners. And I am personally very interested in looking for partners and securing collaboration partners in the Middle East. We want to be able to share those technologies. We've got a number of systems and subsystems which support the spherical tokamak device. And we believe that there may be techno-commercial partnerships where we can build centres of excellence in the Middle East with universities and other industrial and engineering groups. So we really want to build out those conversations. I'd love to meet people today and afterwards and teams that may want to come and see our site and collaborate with us. There is a world of opportunity here across the supply chain, the components, delivery partners, and we believe that the Middle East has a critical role to play in the genuine global deployment. So it's going to have to be a global delivery solution, and all regions, particularly in the Middle East, have a wonderful role to play in helping us deliver this groundbreaking technology. We've got the right strategy. We've got the right technology, combining high-temperature superconducting magnets with the spherical tokamak and the fuel combination that I mentioned earlier. We've got over 200 people and growing fast. We've got world-class scientists and engineers, and we're also looking for world-class recruits out of the Middle East. We want to be able to partner with your universities, help build out the skill sets of your younger generation, help generate jobs here in the Middle East to build out the supply chain. So let's work out how we can do that together. I'd love to engender and build out and engage those conversations from today onwards. Just as a quick closeout to round up, fusion enables us to deliver emission-free energy. It is rapidly deployable and scalable globally. It's non-intermittent, so it's reliable, baseload, and dispatchable. It has a globally dispersed fuel supply, primarily from seawater, which is where we access the deuterium and tritium from, also in combination with lithium. It's globally deployable, this technology, and unlike traditional nuclear fission, there is no long-lived radioactive waste. If you would like to come and have a conversation with me today, I'd like to begin a journey working together with our future colleagues in the Middle East. Thank you so much for the opportunity to meet with you all today.
Thank you, Chris from Tokamak, and it's wonderful to hear of the opportunities that seawater could provide for us. The next person to speak is going to talk about our vision strategies for boosting growth. He's going to talk about how we get those infrastructure projects and sustainable buildings and industries and services around them. Our guest is from the UK government and wants to explore some of the active partnerships that are encouraging the business relationship between the UK and the region. So I'd like to invite Adam Harris of UK Export Finance to come and tell us what he's doing.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I shall have to have words with whoever booked me after the nuclear physicist. A very tough act to follow, but I'll bring you all back down to earth, and you won't need a PhD to follow the finer points of my presentation, I assure you. But that was really inspiring stuff, and underlines the incredible capability that the UK is able to bring to providing sustainable solutions, which does provide a nice segue onto my own presentation. So I'm Adam Harris. I'm from UK Export Finance. I guess the overarching theme of my presentation will be about financing the transition and putting UK capability and expertise at the centre of that and delivering a sustainable future. I want to take the limited time I've got just to introduce UK Export Finance to those of you who aren't familiar with us. We have, historically at least, been described as the UK government's best kept secret. And we're very keen to make sure that people aren't able to say that in the future. I also want to take some time just to underline our commitment to supporting our customers and our friends in the Arab world, and also just to talk about our track record of having done so and the exciting opportunities that we see in the future. And in doing all of that, hopefully I'll perhaps set the scene for some of the topics that we're going to discuss together as a panel afterwards. So just to begin with the basics for the uninitiated, UK Export Finance, it's a government department. We are the UK's export credit agency. A lot of countries have them. In simple terms, we lend and we guarantee debt in overseas projects and critically where there is UK supply in those contracts. We do so within the confines of the OECD arrangement, which provides a level playing field for ECAs, but even within that, and while we stick firmly to the spirit and the letter of that agreement, UK Export Finance, I think, has got some real game-changing capabilities which does distinguish us from our peers. First of all, our guarantee is uniquely well placed to bring efficient liquidity and in significant volumes into landmark projects globally, and particularly in the Middle East region. It represents the full faith and credit of the UK government. It's a 100% guarantee. It's not a 95% insurance product. That is a critical feature for banks lending under our guarantee. It means that they're able to price their debt really, really efficiently, both on a fixed or a floating basis, and under 60 plus global currencies as well, to enable our customers to manage their foreign exchange risk. We're also able, with that guarantee and that capability and with our relationships, to bring the widest possible pool of liquidity to bear to support these global projects. So as well as banks, who are the traditional providers of liquidity in our transactions, we can also offer our guarantee to non-bank financial institutions, to pension funds, even to debt capital market investors. And we have a track record, not just an aspiration, certainly an aspiration to do more, but already a track record of supporting financing in Sharia compliant structures as well. We can put very large sums of money on the table by taking reinsurance from our ECA partners, where they are supporting through us their own national content into a large project, and that allows us to provide, as UKEF, a financing, a one-stop shop financing for a very large project on the table. Exporters applying for our support on behalf of their overseas customers and to secure financing don't need to be quote-unquote UK companies. We welcome applications for support for contracts between overseas companies or sovereign clients as well, where that quote-unquote exporter is an overseas company but is committed to sourcing UK supply into their contract to enable them to perform it. And that UK content, we're not just talking about physical things and widgets. We recognise that the UK is a place of cutting-edge technology and capability, a huge provider of services. Our guarantee can cover UK content in projects in a range of services, intangibles, including intellectual property. So it's a really, really flexible proposition. We can also start a conversation about supporting a transaction with as little as 20% UK content in a given contract. We obviously want to maximise that, and we'll be pushing the number up from there and providing support to do that. But it means we can get into a lot of early stage conversations and really try and bring the UK capability into it. So how do we do that? Where an exporter and their customer are really keen to access our efficient support and to do that at scale, but don't know where to look in the UK supply chain, we can help them. We work with the Chambers of Commerce, with the trade associations, and with our friends at the Department for International Trade to identify the relevant and the capable companies within the UK that can bring to that client the capabilities that they need to perform their contract and to make them eligible for our supply. A further really fantastic innovation, which I hope is going to be relevant to this audience, we can work with overseas contractors to offer support to their clients in third markets. And again, this isn't just an aspiration. We already have an example of working through our cooperation agreement with Etihad Credit Insurance, where we've been able to support a local contractor in the UAE to finance their contract with a client in Africa and bringing UK supply into that. So there are a huge number of different ways in which we can work with people in this room and in the region. We've got additional tools to help identify opportunities for us to work with the widest range of people. We have, for example, a growing network of dedicated UKEF professionals working across the globe from our embassies. This includes already dedicated coverage for markets such as the UAE, for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Egypt, and Morocco. And that's a network, as I say, which is in the process of growing. Finally, conscious I've got limited time, while our focus as UK Export Finance is on the future, of course, we've got a proven track record of working with customers in the Arab world, including in some of the key sectors that we're talking about today and in supporting their sustainable journey towards net zero. So in terms of transport and logistics, our role in supporting cutting-edge technology aircraft is already well known through our support for Airbus, and that support has been widely used in this part of the world. But our support for transportation is not limited to aerospace. Recently, we provided 14-year, £1.7 billion equivalent support for the Cairo monorail project, which helped that great city to address its future transport needs and to do that in a green and a sustainable way, taking traffic off the roads. Our support for the construction of Bihar's headquarters in Sharjah, bringing, again, cutting-edge design, technology, architecture, and capability from the UK, was a landmark transaction for that net zero building. And our relevance to the UAE's thriving hospitality sector is also underlined by our support for landmark projects like the Marsa Al Arab hotel complex. And this is just to scratch the surface of examples of projects where we've already provided support in the region. I'll close just by saying that while we're yet to support our first renewable energy project in the Arab world, we are confident that it's only a matter of time and probably a short period of time before we do, given the early stage opportunities which we are discussing in a range of markets. Meanwhile, our global track record in renewables is already established and already growing, with a dedicated team of 20 plus people focusing specifically on renewable projects. We've already supported, for example, 3 offshore wind projects in Taiwan alone, as well as supporting last year the largest solar project in Turkey ever to date. And that's, we think, just the start of our journey in supporting renewable capability. So hopefully this has piqued the interest of some of you in the room, and I look forward to both the conversation with the panel, but also hopefully conversations outside of this room with many of you in the audience. So to be continued. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adam. And I think we saw there how broad the scope of this is and how many sectors are interconnected, from hospitality to infrastructure. And I think maybe if our next guest could address how to enable those sectors and how to bring new management practices, technology, so that we can satisfy consumer expectations, so that we can unleash the potential of the economies. So we are pleased to be joined by Ayaa Gadad, who can talk about the wider business implications of growth.
Thank you, Damien, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Ayaa Gadad. I'm Head of Strategy and Business Development at the Sahl Group. It's a great honor for me to be here today, and I want to thank the Arab-British Chamber of Commerce for arranging such a great event and for, getting us all together. So, I actually have a question. What are the determinants of a successful nation's development? I would say the economy, the environment, and society. However, we cannot balance these three without sustainable development. Whether through developing transport systems, power-generating facilities, clean water, and sanitation network, infrastructure provides services that enable societies to function and economies to thrive directly and indirectly. By investing in sustainable projects in the Arab world, we can align with the Sustainable Development Goals, and we meet the rising demand for new infrastructure building projects, and there are huge opportunities within that. As I come from a Libyan background and work for the Sahl Group, a Libyan conglomerate with considerable market experience, it's important that today I tell you about some of the exciting infrastructure projects which are in development and emerging. So let's start with some general facts about Libya. Libya is known as the gateway to Africa, and it has a total land area of around 1.7 million square kilometers and a population of approximately 6.8 million people. The capital, Tripoli itself, is home to 1.3 million, and around 40% of the population is in the 3 main cities, which are Tripoli, Benghazi, and Misrata. Libya has the biggest oil reserves in Africa, making the oil industry one of the most successful in the continent. However, we are working towards building a space in Libya where renewable energy can be used, not just oil. Libya is on the threshold of new economic evolution. After a decade of conflict, which resulted in, great damage to the infrastructure, it has been estimated that Libya needs approximately $1 billion to build new infrastructure and get us back on track. Much work has been done and significant progress has been made. One of the areas where there has been much activity is renewable energy. To illustrate this, let me give you a few examples about a recent infrastructure projects, and particularly projects in the field of solar PV. In Kufra and Tajura, 2 new solar power plants are being built with a planned capacity of 100 megawatts. Occupying an area of 200 hectares, the plant will help achieve energy security for the local population by fortifying the electrical grid, which was previously supplied by a now out-of-service thermal power plant. These will support the country's goals to increase power generation from sustainable resources instead of just using oil reserves. Despite all the natural oil and gas reserves, Libya is transitioning towards clean energy. The government aims to generate 22% of its country's electricity from renewables by 2030. This aligns with the 2030 vision of the General 30 of Electricity and Renewable Energy, which seeks to grow clean energy capacity, particularly in solar and wind. Libya renewables wealth offers huge potential. The Libyan desert itself, in the southern part of the country, has an area of 1.3 million square kilometers, is one example. Solar panels covering a surface of just 1% of the Libyan desert would actually generate enough energy for the whole world. And, I hope you all agree that this is a phenomenal statistic. Our own company, the Sahl Group, has been extensively engaged in contributing to development and resilience of Libya over the last 50 years. And we agree that a clean and a more sustainable world is the way forward, not just for Libya, but for our neighboring countries and the whole world. We offer general renewable technologies, products, and services. We build projects based on sustainable and resilient projects, and we actually recently just built Libya's largest industrial complex in Ayaa area, just outside Tripoli, which is over 40 hectares. And we have been a catalyst for Libya's transformation, building the manufacturing and infrastructure strength, and that is still our top priority. Our future vision for Libya is to build a robust and sustainable infrastructure, reduce dependence on fossil fuels, and generate new economic activity. But this vision isn't just for Libya, it's for the MENA region, and obviously, as we have strengthened our relationships with the UK, I think it's now a new beginning. And through this, we can deliver services to society which will improve long-term individual livelihoods, quality of life, and most importantly, human dignity. Libya is one of Africa's most robust and, but underrated economies, and is positioned to become a success story once again with built-in sustainability and resilience. As a company, we believe that public and private sectors can work together to rebuild this through sustainable and renewable resources. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think it would be only fair now to throw some questions open to the floor on a very wide range of topics that we've just gone through. Please identify yourself and identify, if you wish, a particular panelist that you want to address your questions to, or indeed if you have general questions, then please throw them out and we can select someone to take it up. There's already one hand over here, so let's go for yourself.
Yes, thank you very much. A very interesting panel discussion. My name is Peter Tesch. I'm a founding director of the Mauritanian British Business Council. What I have particular questions about, what I'm interested in is, I was still am in logistics and shipping, but I'm moving into desalination, using renewable energies, etc., for a project in the Sahl to bring water from Nouakchott, Mauritania, to Port Sudan. So I'm interested to speak to UKEF. I'm interested to speak to Chris as well, because we are following kind of the same ideas, you know. But finance is an issue, you know, because it's sometimes a very wild project, you know. Who wants to connect by a water pipeline, Nouakchott to Port Sudan, you know? Even BP says you're mad, you know. So this is the kind of the issues people like us, you know, people like me are faced with.
I think maybe that's, Adam, if you want to start off. I mean, what sort of opportunities can you help people like that to unleash?
Well, look, thank you for your question, and I'm certainly very happy to take you up on the request to have a private conversation outside the room, just to understand the specifics of the opportunity that you're talking about. Certainly recognise the role that water security and desalination projects have increasingly, and in fact the water sector is one that UKF already has a track record of supporting. Clearly, we would need to undertake due diligence on a specific opportunity and understand its features and its particular risks and opportunities. But it's absolutely a sector which we're very focused on. We recognise its importance and would love to support more, and know the UK has expertise and capability in this area. So let's talk outside the room. Thank you.
And Chris, do you have anything on the role of renewables in something as what sounds like fairly mega project?
Yeah, look, I mean, water security is absolutely critical, not only in the Middle East, but in many other countries now, particularly as climate change is disturbing the water cycle globally. So, and we all know that to generate clean water from desalination, it's actually quite an energy-intensive exercise with the current technologies. So fusion alongside renewables are combinations depending on, as I said earlier in my talk, the local dynamics in a particular country will vary. Some countries will have plenty of solar radiation, so the Middle East is blessed with that form of renewable energy. Other countries less so. So I do see a combination of renewables and other emerging technologies such as fusion playing a critical role, synthetic fuels, water desalination plants as we go into the 2030s, 40s and 50s. But I'd love to have a further conversation afterwards. Thank you.
And from a North African perspective, Ayaa, do you have any thoughts on developing projects like that and the need there is in the region?
Yeah, definitely, and I feel like, especially now that Libya's growing and, companies are growing and people are looking for new opportunities and new ways to develop, it's definitely something that, both the public and the private sector are interested in, especially because we can't just depend on fossil fuels and, the oil and gas reserves. We need to find other ways to generate energy.
Okay. And I think we've got another question in the middle of the room here. Someone's.
Hello, Alan Wrights, West London Chambers of Commerce. I first of all want to congratulate the initiative from Libya of growing solar power projects across the Sahara Desert. It's a much better way of generating heat than putting solar farms on agricultural land that we have in the UK. From UK Export Finance's perspective, what type of appetite do you have to help finance these projects in Libya? That they're the future. There's a lot of work going on in Morocco to supply 10% of the UK's electricity in 5 years' time. It would be great if Libya could follow that with help from ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
So at the moment, unfortunately, UKF doesn't have appetite to support projects in Libya, except potentially where the revenues that would repay the loan can be fully externalised. But we do have risk appetite and considerable risk appetite in the market like Morocco that you've mentioned. And we do, as you would expect, we keep our risk appetite to support projects in all markets globally under regular review.
Ayaa, did you want to come in?
No, I was just going to say, you know, in terms of finance, the Libyan government is, you know, supportive of supporting such projects. And what we look for from the UK is the skills and the know-how and partnerships, you know, rather than finance.
Okay, and I'll just fit in one very quick question as the last question while the microphone comes. There's a microphone coming.
Ghassan Hijay, I'm past president of the International Desalination Association of Water Use. I get very nervous when I hear desalination being discussed and out of the context where it should be. Desalination is not as energy intensive as we think about it, but it will always can be improved. But the most important thing is the second part of my title, and water reuse. Because unless we address this subject throughout the world, we are really doing ourselves a big disservice. And the other thing to do is I would like to remind our Libyan friends in the biggest disaster in history, which was done, the so-called the Grand Fantastic River, where we brought fresh water from the desert all the way up to this coastline at a higher cost in energy than desalination on the coast. And if there is something to be really addressed, it's this should be highlighted all the time, so big mistakes like this cannot be done. And also the governments and the agencies who finance that project should be really held to task even now, just to emphasize that crimes can be done on the environment. Thank you very much. I couldn't resist.
Thank you. That's a fantastic last right of reply. I'm afraid we do have to wind the panel up here, so if I can hand back to our hosts.
Thank you, Damien. Thank you to all the panel. Thank you very much.